Webster's dictionary defines wedding as the fusing of two metals with a hot torch.
Not quite, Michael. But it does include the following descriptions of liberalism. And since neo just means new, neoliberalism should be pretty simple, right? But think about this term. It could mean anything from making out to second base, third base, or a home run. These phrases are intentionally vague. Same for neoliberal. But there's a movement afoot to redefine and reclaim the term.
My name is Colin Mortimer, and I'm a neoliberal. I have been the director of the Center for New Liberalism since 2017.
But again, it's never that simple.
Hello, I am Phil Magness. I am a senior research fellow at the American Institute for Economic Research, and I am not a neoliberal.
Let's go back, way back, to the Enlightenment, a time of I think, therefore I am, Newton's laws of motion, and Bacon. Francis Bacon. It was a time of challenging absolute monarchies and the divine right of kings. The Enlightenment is when the separation of church and state became a thing. Those Enlightenment thinkers, writers, and scientists, they were called liberals. Adam Smith, liberal. The Founding Fathers, liberals. But this whole neo business, no, not that neo, the Greek prefix, is where things get murky.
The history of it goes way back into the early 20th century. The precepts of a classically liberal free society are basically under assault, both from the Marxist left, the far left, and then what eventually becomes the fascist or Nazi end of the right wing of the spectrum.
And they both believe in the use of force and oppression to accomplish their political goals. So while they couldn't be any different in what they're trying to achieve, they both united in picking out the same enemy and using many of the same tactics to achieve their goals.
That enemy was liberalism, and Marxist theorists began by targeting economic marginalism. They coined a new term in their native German.
In 1922 and again in 1924, each of them write articles that directly target von Mises as what they call the forefront of the emerging Neoliberalismus school of thought.
On the heels of the Great Depression, amidst a wave of increasing state power, a group of liberal-minded economists, including Mises and Friedrich Hayek, met in Paris. It became known as the Walter Lippmann Colloquium.
Everyone kind of came into that meeting being like, we need to chart a third way between laissez-faire and socialism. And it's just saying that there should be a role for the state and there should be a role for the free market.
And during the course of this colloquium, one of the participants, Alexander Rustow, proposes adopting a moniker, adopting a name, and he suggests the term neoliberalism. But there's actually a debate that breaks out in several of the participants, led by Jacques Rueff, who's one of the participants from France, basically criticize and denounce the term neoliberalism. So the Lippmann Colloquium ends without any consensus that neoliberalism should be adopted.
In 1947, after World War II brought about even more state power, many of those economists reconvened in the village of Montpellier, Switzerland. The question, can we combat the rise of the state and Marxist/Keynesian central planning by conceding on certain points?
So Mises, for example, stands up and basically denounces this concession, this proposed concession to a welfare state as socialistic at the first Montpellier meeting. And that debate has basically continued ever since. But for our purposes, neoliberalism is very quickly abandoned as even a proposed term, because it was never adopted in 1938. It's certainly not adopted in 1947. The term basically disappears from use from about the late 1940s into really the early 1980s.
That's when Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, with advisor Milton Friedman, enter the scene, ostensibly seeking to roll back aspects of the welfare state.
And they're not the ones at fault for the reason why the term got warped in meaning. The reason the term got warped in meaning was critics of them we're trying to find a way to generalize all of them.
It's attached to Ayn Rand as the objectivist philosopher. It's attached to political figures such as Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan, as they are emerging as basically free market but conservative thinkers. It's attached to Bill and Hillary Clinton.
For Colin, that was a bridge too far.
We were reclaiming it from the people on the left who were referring to moderate Democrats in the 2016 primary as neoliberals. We're just going to use it as kind of a FU to the people who were using it against us. But very quickly, our little in-joke blew into something far bigger than we ever expected, because we tapped into a really large contingent of people who are frustrated with the leftward and rightward lurches of their parties in their country.
Safe to say, Dr. Magness has a different view.
People that are advocating the reclaiming of neoliberalism today are probably well-meaning, but they also want to dabble into areas of the welfare state or areas of regulatory exercise. So, for example, some people that call themselves neoliberals today embrace things like universal basic income as an efficiency-improving version of the welfare state.
I think the universal part of it is going to encounter a lot more obstacles than people anticipate. But I believe this idea that there is a minimum standard of living, a basic income, as UBI calls it, that we should be ensuring is a good one. And how we get there, I think, is really the political debate.
How about a carbon tax?
You also want to change the incentives of citizens so that they're making better individual choices that push these companies and producers in the right direction. And a carbon tax is a way to do that. So I think neoliberals are generally wary of the blunt force of the state, but they believe the state can have a softer role, a softer touch in creating outcomes that we believe are the best way forward.
My fear is that if we enacted a carbon tax, it would be captured politically by environmental interests, much in the same way that environmental regulation currently is. And when it's captured politically, it becomes very difficult to change, very difficult to alter, almost impossible to repeal.
And what about the term itself, neoliberal?
I ask myself, why would you try to reclaim a term that is clearly used in intentional disparaging, intentional pejorative contexts by its critics?
The internet's like an ironic place. People don't want to be so serious because it gets mocked. So what we're really doing is kind of bringing neoliberalism back to its original roots, its original conception, which was, how do we chart a third way between the state and the free market?
So, should those of us who believe in free markets and personal liberties reclaim the term neoliberal or reject it? Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and like this video if you'd watch a live debate between Colin and Dr. Magness. But always, always keep in mind, state actors are just as self-interested as free market actors.